Hello, everyone, and happy Thursday. It's Thursday, so it's time for another Voices of Resilience. Uh, I'm Nathan Hofer. I'm the Director of Campus Operations with Lost&Found. If you don't know what Lost&Found is, we are not just the place where you turn in the things that you are missing. We get those emails on occasion, but what we focus in on is mental health through resiliency for young adults. Right now, we have a lot of focus on our collegiate chapters, and we really focus on building resiliency and providing some preventative health things because, life happens. We're in the midst of a global pandemic. We're in the midst of a whole bunch of things in our world, and we can always learn how to be a little bit more resilient to what life throws at us. So we focus very much on the front end of providing resources, skills, training, and a community that focuses on building strong mental health. Because we'd like to live in a world where we can talk openly about mental health, where there's no stigmas associated with it, and we don't have to deal with self-harm or suicidal behaviors. That's our hope, our dream. I say this a lot. I'd love to work myself out of a job, but that we're not quite there yet. And conversations like the one we're going to have today help us move further along that. So today, I'm super excited to bring Sara Jamison on board. Sara is, I got to know Sara when I worked at downtown Sioux Falls, and she owns Tara Shepherd Boutique and Apothecary downtown. And she has just this passion for people, passion for life, and passion for making everything we do intentional and have meaning and just focused on wellness and well-being. And I'm just so excited to have you on with us today, Sara.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
I say this every week. I think I selfishly just like to do these because I get to hang out with cool people every week. And I'm like, works out for me.
Good enough reason for me.
Yeah. So Sara, why don't you just tell us a little bit more about yourself? I think everyone who's watching will love to get to know you a little bit more.
Yeah, I am a Sioux Falls native. I grew up in Sioux Falls. I lived in Lincoln, Nebraska for about 7 years. I went to college at UNL, but made my way back to Sioux Falls. I never anticipated that this is where I would land. I very much envisioned myself on the East Coast or possibly Chicago, a much more urban setting. But I love Sioux Falls. I've been back for almost 10 years now, and I am just proud of our little community and the strides that we've made in the arts and food offerings and entertainment and everything we have to offer. I own Tara Shepherd, but I'm also a mother. My husband and I have been married for just about 4 years now. Our almost 3-year-old son was born just a few days before our anniversary. We were in the hospital with him on our first anniversary. But we love to get outside, and that's kind of always what I say is my happy place. Nature grounds me. Fresh air helps calm the constant chatter that always seems to be brewing in my mind. But we like a lot of dog walks, and we like to eat good food, and we're pretty laid back folks.
I love it. By the way, I definitely resonate. I never thought I'd still be in South Dakota.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up, near here, Freeman, small town.
Mm-hmm.
And I never thought I'd be in South Dakota. Never thought.
Yeah.
And here I am. And like I said, same thing. Love Sioux Falls, love South Dakota. But you had asked me even, 6-7 years ago if I was going to be in South Dakota.
Yeah. If you would have asked 20-year-old Sara that, I'm almost 36 now, it just wouldn't have even been in the back of my mind. But here I am.
And this has nothing to relate to anything. It's just something that's funny that popped in my head. As you mentioned going to Lincoln, I don't know what it is about Lincoln. My family are big Husker fans, and my sweet 95-year-old grandma, nice, sweet lady, but when Husker comes around, she becomes not a sweet person. It's a
different world. There is a lot of pride and a lot of tradition and culture that surrounds football in that city and that state. So everything kind of shuts down.
It's very wild. I mean, not pertinent to our conversation, just a funny thought. As you mentioned Lincoln, I just thought about my grandma, who I just saw yesterday because she's living up here in South Dakota now with us. And because of COVID and everything, she's living with my parents out there. And saw her the other day, and I was just thinking, how's my sweet grandma? And I just remember her getting all fired up. And it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Irrelevant. But before we dive in here, I do want to say, I know we've got some people watching live, and we'll have more people that pop in. Feel free to comment. Feel free to share and let us know what questions you have for Sara. We want to hear from you. And Cassie, yes. Yes, Cassie. We haven't had a lot to celebrate lately, but still, yes.
Yes.
And if you're a Nebraska fan, and that's all we've had to be in the last 12 years.
Yeah. But still, I mean, that's resiliency in and of itself, right? Being a Husker fan.
Being a fan of certain teams is being resilient. Yes, I agree. Well, Sara, I could talk about. Well, I could just hang on and talk with you for hours, and we should probably focus in though.
Yeah.
Together, Sara. It's my fault.
Yeah.
No, but I know one thing you've shared about is that you mentioned Tara Shepard. And I think one thing that's interesting to me is that you never, I mean, I might be wrong, but I think I remember you saying you never thought you'd own your own store. You never thought that was like something you would be doing. So what led you to that decision? And, what is it about what you're doing with Tara Shepard that you're like, this is where I'm going to be?
Yeah. I mentioned that I'm almost 36 now. I graduated from college with a bachelor's degree in journalism. I minored in economics and political science. I never in a million years imagined I would land in retail, that's where I would kind of find myself. I don't think many people aspire to work in retail. I think it's one of those things that just happens. But I've spent my post-college years with a very defined picture of what success looked like, the salary job, all of these things. And I had jobs in communications after college, but everything left me feeling very unfulfilled, which is hard too after you've spent 4 years in college and not really figuring out, like I felt like I was supposed to have it all figured out and know what I wanted to do. And I just felt really, really lost. And about 8 years ago now, I started my first job in retail. And for whatever reason, and it was at a huge big box retailer. I've worked in a variety of retailers since, but it's where like everything clicked. I got to do a little bit of all of the things that really fulfilled me, the face-to-face customer interaction, being able to create displays and merchandise, but then also analyze numbers and use strategies to assort goods to build margins. But there were still always these moments where I was just trying to seek out affirmation and validation in others, rather than really finding that fulfillment in myself. And that kind of started me down the path of wondering if I could be my own boss. But it was almost like I had been waiting for like permission or something for someone to be like, yeah, go do this thing, which doesn't happen. But I also got really sick of, if you've ever worked in retail, I'm sure you have heard at one time or another that like, well, that's just the way retail is. Like everything that sucks about working retail, people tell you that's just the way it is. And I didn't know why that's the way it had to be. Why do the hours have to be ridiculous? Why do you have to work every weekend? Why do you have to be open on a holiday? Why can't you have more connections with the goods that you sell? So that also started this idea churning. And after many, many conversations, like with family and my husband, and I know now I didn't need permission, but he was like, well, why don't you open a store? Like, why don't you just do this thing? And I was like, why don't I? Um,
Good point.
but it just sounds like a really scary thing. Like, our family is young. Everything that we have, monetarily is invested in this place. But after trying to, the worst thing that happens is that, we close the doors, and that's really the worst thing that happens, that the shop doesn't succeed. But I ultimately wanted to show my son that I would rather try to do the thing I wanted to do rather than just wondering. And then our family growingly had interest in ethically made goods and sustainably made goods. And there just wasn't a place to easily find ethical fashion in Sioux Falls. So that kind of became the thing. And it also provided something to really, really easily be passionate about beyond it being my store. Just being able to tell the stories of the people behind the things that we buy.
That's really cool. Ethical fashion. I like that. That's a good phrase.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Sarah, I also have a 3-year-old, and I know how fun that is. It's exhausting, but it's exciting. And so, in the midst of having a young child, you opened this store. You had, and now, I mean, you've been in business just over a year, correct?
Yep.
In
It's a year in April.
Yeah, a year and 3 months. Math's hard.
Mm-hmm.
That's close. You know, I have to ask, you're a small business owner, you're doing things that are kind of unique. Like you said, you're doing stuff that's in a space that there's not a lot of folks doing that in this community. And then you have a young family, we talked about home improvement the other day, you're in the midst of all sorts of fun activities. And then COVID hits. And it's been wild for everyone. And I just, like I said, I think I said this to you the other day, but formerly working with DTSF, I got to know a lot of these small business owners, and I got to feel like that, they were my people, they were my community. And I thought about many of you in this time, but one thing, how I mean, how did that affect you? How did that affect you, not just your store, but you and your family and your employees? Like, how does that affect you as a small business owner when the world shut down?
It affects all areas, and the unknown, no matter what that is scary for everyone. Starting a new business is scary in and of itself. Most small businesses don't survive the 3-year mark. And to throw a global health crisis and economic crisis.
Yeah, what is this junk?
Right? What is 2020? But to throw that in there is really freaking scary. And it's still scary because there's still a lot of unknowns. But I think the first thing just coming to grips with that, this is really scary, and telling myself that there is a lot out of my control, because I made the decision also to close our store or our physical space for 10 weeks. Because I simply had to remind myself, what are my priorities? The safety of my team, the safety of the people who come into our store is important. But also just that people feel safe in our space. When you come into our store, it's a serene and very comforting environment. And I didn't want that to be affected by all of the chaos going on around us, but then also having to figure out, how do I keep the wheels turning to try to keep us afloat to get to the other side of this, because I want my team to have jobs. And so it's moments of that kind of, oh crap, the world is burning, but then trying to let go of the things that we can't control, because right now there's so much out of our control. And I really had to narrow in on what I can focus on and consistently remind myself in every decision that, yes, I want the store to survive, but I also want to take actions in this difficult time that make me confident that I will be able to look at myself in the mirror and be happy with the decisions that I made on the other side of this. So, and that was part of closing the doors in a time when a lot of retailers canceled pre-booked orders, because logically your brain goes into shutdown mode. That's part of it. You cut expenses because your revenue is going to be low. But for me, it just wasn't an option to not take orders I had committed to, because that means the people who made those goods don't get paid. So just consistently making those decisions, but then also adapting to, well, if people can't come inside, what are we going to do beyond shipping orders to make our goods accessible? So delivery became a regular part of my job, like buckling up our toddler and doing deliveries 3 times a week on top of, the regular business operations, and then applying for grants and trying to figure out different bills being passed to support small business. So it still is a lot of chaos. But
when we're talking about delivery, I mean, I hope your toddler is good in the car, because my children are not.
Nope.
So that in of itself is a testament to buckling down and giving of yourself, because, like I said, my experience of putting our kids in the car is not one that I would recommend to anyone.
No, he's not an ideal co-pilot. Some days are great, and then some days when you have 3 hours of deliveries and someone in the back seat isn't happy, it makes for a long ride.
Hey, I can barely get 5 minutes without a mild meltdown from our youngest, so that's fine. It's fine. It's all good. I think about that, and I think about that mentality of care, and making it work. And something that you shared with me the other day that I hadn't heard anyone share this mantra, but you were telling me that the thing was, don't just survive, thrive. Use this to thrive. Like, I feel like that's probably, in the midst of it, I assume that would be difficult to hear. I don't know.
It adds another element of pressure, that's for sure. When the world is kind of feeling like it's collapsing around you, it's a tough thing to hear. And it's something that I honestly was like, yeah, like it sounds great. This is what I want to do. I don't want to just get through this indefinite amount of time that's ahead of me. I want to knock it out of the park. But I quickly had to realize that just wasn't sustainable to me as a human being. Because I started my business partly to be able to have more time with my family, and to not be, I love my work, but I don't want it to be what defines me. And I quickly, with this idea in my head, found myself like literally all hours of the day on every device, checking emails, answering inquiries at all hours of the day, waking up at 5 a.m. in a panic because I had to check messages. And I had to let that go and let myself get comfortable with the fact that just surviving right now is the key to any success in the future, and being okay with that. I'm an achiever. I am a perfectionist. So if I do something, I want to do it well. But at the end of the day, especially in crisis, we just have to get things done and get through it, no matter how messy that is. And now, like looking back, like I have absolutely no shame in that. And I think I will be able to more readily remind myself of that in the future, that like, oh, this is one of those times when like I just gotta get through it. And that's okay.
Have you, I mean, you said something just now that made me think of something. You mentioned that you didn't want your identity to be wrapped up in your work.
Mhm.
But do you feel like because of your work, you are identified as, oh, Sara, Tara Shepherd, like they are one. Have you had that happen, and how has that maybe affected how you view yourself?
It is. And I think partly, I mean, a lot of that, like, even with our social media, it's kind of a melting pot of not just like, hey, look at these pretty things, but also all of the other things that I'm passionate about as a human being. So our brand is very much tied up in those ideas, but more and more to me. And I think this has been the case since the beginning. Tara Shepherd is community. It's not me. It is the women who make up my team, our customers that have supported us from day one and that we have met more recently. It's not me. So that takes some of that pressure off. It's the people, it's a group of people, it's a collective of people. So I think that takes some of that pressure off. But having that personal connection too, I think it just makes it easier to maintain my passion for it. But at the end of the day, like I realize it's a tough marketplace. And if everything that I do in my identity is tied up in this space, and for whatever reason that space doesn't make it, then that would be hard, but even further devastating if it was my sole identity.
Yeah.
So,
So I guess with that in mind, and based on what you said about, sometimes it's, I might be paraphrasing, but kind of what I gathered from what you shared earlier was, it was okay just to survive. It was all right to just dig in and survive. I mean, in the midst of this pandemic, I think you've probably had to really evaluate your sense of identity, and like I said, your ability to push through, push through the hard and get just to a point where you're still keeping your head above water. I mean, not just with small businesses, but I think this pandemic, it just emphasizes what a lot of people in our world are going through. What would you say to others who are feeling that same way? Like, not necessarily with a business, or maybe with a business, but they're feeling like their identity it might feel like it could be so tied up in the success or failure of their product. And whatever that is, their personal life choices, their work, their whatever, but also when the hard is happening and they feel like they should be able to get above that, but all they're doing is just treading water. I mean, what would you say that was a lot of words and
I
no
would say
substance? I'm sorry.
first, just like admit to yourself that this is tough. Like, think about what in all of this, like, there is not a person untouched by the chaos of the past 3 or 4 months. It has impacted all of our lives and how we live our day-to-day lives tremendously. And I like to think about, like, that idea of practicing what you preach. Like, we're really, really hard on ourselves, and we think we should just be able to magically rise and triumph over these difficult times. But if someone else was coming to you, you would look at them and say, like, give yourself grace. This is tough. Like, these are problems that we have never seen. So I think just admitting to yourself that, like, first, like, this is really tough, and process that, and kind of give yourself space to grieve the loss of what normalcy looked like. Because if we don't process how difficult something is and just try to, compartmentalize or push it aside, then we never really deal with those traumas, however big or small they are. We don't really get past it. So I think just letting myself have space to kind of wallow in and not for too long, but give yourself time to accept how incredibly difficult a hand we're being dealt right now is. It gives you a space to go forward and to kind of develop a path forward. And a big thing for me too is just being a better communicator and asking for help. And for me right now, that looks like with my husband, my partner at home. Like, he is a rock star dad, cooking, cleaning, all of the things, like making sure bills get sent off. They're not difficult things, but in the midst of even just opening the business, things that I just don't have the capacity to do right now. Like, I can't take on another thing. So just being able to ask for help, even with the simple things, I think is really huge. And it might not be help directly with the issue that you're dealing with, but support in another area that frees you up to be able to face that challenge head on.
Yeah. It sounds like obviously you have a support system at home, but do you have kind of a community that's supporting you on the outside? I know you mentioned that within the Tara Shepherd team.
Yeah. These women are amazing. And like, from the beginning, when we closed, and having to talk to my part-timers and letting them know, like, we just don't have hours right now because I don't know what next week looks like. I don't know what 2 weeks looks like. And the immediate response was, what can we do? How can we help? Can we work for free? Which, like, no, that's not an option. But just that in and of itself, knowing that people have your back is huge. And I think whether we think we do or not, there are a lot of people who always do have your back. So that's really huge too. And I just being able to be transparent with them and letting them know that I don't know what the next week looks like, but that I don't want to do this alone. And we together will take it week by week to see what this looks like. And my full-time team member, Tuesday, has been remarkably adaptable because her priorities and her position have changed and evolved dramatically over these past 3 months. And I think just seeing us all do that together has kind of helped make us all become uncomfortable with constantly being uncomfortable. But that community is everything. And that can look like a lot of different things for a lot of different people. But we also have to communicate that we need the support.
Yeah.
People can't help us with what if they don't know we need something. So
yeah, well, yeah, two things I just thought of from what you said. One was, it really, for me, it really echoed what we had last week with Cam talking. She was talking about some stuff that she was like upset with her friends about not talking to her about, but she had never talked to them about it. So it's like, she's like, shame. I think her phrase was, shame on you for not asking me, but shame on me for not talking about it. So opening up and that piece of vulnerability, that act of vulnerability is hard. I mean, I think we just need to acknowledge that, that it's hard to do. And two, I just want to say, obviously you've done a great job of building a community when you have people who want to work for free. I mean, I think, anyone who's watching right now, I think if you want some good tips about building a strong network of support, regardless of where you're at, talk to Sara. I'm going to throw us up early, but here's her contact, TaraShepherd.com and @TaraShepherdBoutique. But you don't get that kind of buy-in, Sara, from people, especially when you're talking about retail or working or anything like that. Like rarely do you find that kind of mentality at something where it's a for-profit business. Like that's you almost never see that people are going to say, "Can I come into work for free? What can I do?" Like I think that's just very telling about the environment and the network you've helped to create. And I think that's an incredible lesson for myself, and I hope for anyone else watching. It's like, hey, how do you build a network around you that when stuff falls apart, they want to be in the midst of it with you, even if it doesn't benefit them at all?
I think the big part too is just focusing on relationships. I love our products, but at the end of the day, like it's not our main focus in our everyday conversations with the guests that walk through our doors, the people who contact us on social media. The number one thing I tell people who I'm bringing on board to work for me, I want every single person who walks through our doors to feel seen, whether they buy a single thing or not. And I think by being very clear in your communication of what your mission are and your values, whether you're a business owner or just in life, I think it attracts that people with those same values. It brings them towards you. And when your focus is relationships, when the tough stuff happens, I feel like you help foster that support network naturally. And I don't know that I intentionally did that, but I'm really glad that it's the case and that it shows how important it is to continue to enrich and foster those relationships. Focus on people.
Yeah. I think that's even more telling that you didn't do it intentionally. I mean, I've worked with a lot of groups, and that's a thing that people look for constantly. How do you build that? How do you make that happen? And I think, you just saying like this, you just did it. That's incredible. And it could be for any of you watching who are trying to figure out the secrets, it might be mildly frustrating that we don't have a 3-step process. But, I think I want to acknowledge it because anyone's watching this, I think we need to note that, one, how powerful a community of support is, but how powerful everyone's role in that is. Because I guarantee, Sara, that if you had some of those people in your network, I know you're a full-time employee, if she reached out to you and said, hey, this is what's going on, I guarantee you'd also say, what can I do? What can I do to help? How can I help? I don't care if, you're doing it not because there's nothing else is involved. It's just you. So, I think that's, from what I know of you, Sara, I think that's totally what you would do if you had one of your friends in the same boat, or even people that you just are in your network. I think you would give of your time and energy. We got to serve it. You hosted a day to serve at the banquet, and you recruited BTSF to do that. So I had to get up early, but it was.
It's those moments when like everything is really hard, creating those moments to give back. It helps us fill our own cups too. So I'm grateful to be surrounded by people who are excited about those choices to, like, hey, let's do community yoga, raise some funds to pay for meals at the banquet, or when we do fundraisers for other nonprofits. It's just a fun way to engage our community, engage our team, and it feels good. And we need more of that right now.
Yes, it's yeah, it's nice to find hope when things feel like that's just finding that light is sometimes hard to do right now.
Yep.
So,
And I think we have to find it because there's a lot of big stuff happening. I think we just have to find it in the everyday little things right now, are the things that are getting us through those everyday moments.
yeah, and you mentioned, just a little bit ago, the hard stuff, the stuff that's happening that's piles on and feels difficult, so what are some of those, maybe you don't have to share specifically like what this situation might be. What are some of those things in life that you would say are like the hard things, and then more importantly, how you use those to turn those into growth?
Yeah, I think every difficult experience in retrospect is its own case study of how we reacted. And depending on how we reacted, how did that turn out for us? And like I said, in my early 20s or post college years, I just felt very unsettled. I didn't feel like I had a path. Um, I feel like it was inevitable, but like a lot of anxiety and depression and my own inability to face these things head on led me to just try to turn them off and consistently running from these things. And looking back, like, I don't miss my 20s at all because a good portion of them just sucked because I was running away from the crap I really needed to deal with. So that's like a case study forever in my life of like, no, I need to acknowledge when things are hard and when I am struggling, because that's, for me personally, the first part of moving forward. And I kind of mentioned that before, like, you can't pretend like the bad stuff isn't happening. You can't pretend like you aren't anxious every day. So now, like, I feel like I'm better equipped just from those awful times of avoidance. I'm better equipped now to know that I just need to let it be hard, and I need to communicate to the people in my life that I feel comfortable with, to figure out a path forward, and that I can't always do it on my own. And I also need to be really cognizant of the things that trigger me. Like, if I'm feeling overwhelmed, like, I need to learn how to say no, which is something that I can struggle with. I want to make people happy. I want to do all the things. But I have really had to get comfortable with, like, no, I'm focused on this goal right now. I want to stay in service to that, but maybe another time, or that it's not a right fit. And then just finding moments for myself, and learning when I don't do that, the consequences, whether it's just like a dog walk in the morning or coffee on our back deck, things like that. Just noticing the things that make you feel better. And when things start spiraling, what's the root of that? And acknowledging that cause, and then just using that going forward to hopefully have a better outcome.
Yeah. I resonate with that. I hate that I'm always grateful for the bad things, and I would never go back and go through them, but at the same time, I wouldn't want to take them away.
Yeah.
And I very much understand that it stinks to think about those hard times, but we learn more, as from that old sports analogy, you learn more from a loss than you do from a win.
Mm-hmm.
And it hurts and it's hard. But how do you, take that and transform it and use that as a launch point? And I think that's where we see a lot of people struggling, is that we get stuck in the hurt. We get stuck in the pain. We get stuck in the loss. And you said just a little bit ago that you let yourself wallow sometimes, but not too. Yeah.
Yeah.
You set a time frame for it. Having boundaries in place. I think that's incredibly. That's a really powerful skill, a unique skill, one that I really wish I had a better handle of. But yeah, I think that's a beautiful set of sentiments there, and hopefully something that we can all kind of take to heart too, is that like sometimes, life is hard.
It is, and it is for everyone. And I think when we're in the thick of the tough stuff, it's even all the more difficult because we're so connected on social media that we just see everyone else's bright, shiny stuff. So when I also am giving myself that time to wallow, I also try to disconnect. So I'm not seeing everyone else's bright, shiny stuff when I need a moment to let the suck. So,
I often said two things to students, because I worked in higher ed for a decade. Gross. Can say that and not even have it be a joke or facetious. It's weird. But I worked in higher ed, and I told students often, like, if I can teach you two things, well, one thing it would be to say no. Say no to some things, even if it's the things that I'm asking. Except, no, don't say no to the things I'm asking, of course. Obviously. But the other thing is, like, how do you say no? And then, oh gosh, I just lost my train of thought. That's really embarrassing. Just what were we just saying? It just went out the window.
I think you were talking about how to, like, just the power of being able to say no, but
there's something else I had. I lost it. It was going to be good. I promise you. It was going to be really.
I don't know. I'm not in your head.
Really good. I don't know what we were just. It just went out I started talking about saying no, and I started thinking about. Oh, I remember. Got it. It's back. I was thinking about all of my students, and I think that's where my brain went. Saying no, and one thing we talked about with them a lot was social media. You talk about that. It's that idealized world. You see the things that are good, and I remember a student sharing this with me. It was like. It was all a joke, but they're like, oh, went home for the holidays, and Aunt Karen's like, oh, looks like you're having a lot of fun in college. It's like, yeah, well, it's because I'm not showing you the pictures of me crying in the corner during finals week on Instagram, Aunt Karen. It was like, I always thought that was pretty funny.
We all know that too. Like, we've heard this before, but I still think we get caught up in it, where we keep scrolling and we feel ourselves sometimes feeling like lower and lower, and we like don't put it down. And like, we've been told this, that it's only the bright, shiny things you see. You see the good on social media, but still, I think sometimes we're our own worst enemy, and we want to trick ourselves into believing that no one else has a care in the world. And that's just not the case.
Yeah. Also, I see a comment coming in here. First off, I want to say you are not being ignored here. And no, Sarah is not one. She's not seeing the comments. I'm seeing the comments. So we're just getting to you. Don't worry. We want to say happy birthday to your friend Emmett. We want to make sure that sounds great. Sounds like he must be going through some hard stuff. So that's pretty cool that he's things are happening. That's good.
Happy birthday, Emmett.
Yeah, so that's awesome. So happy birthday, I guess. Yeah. Yes. I'm glad. Like I said, I don't know what's going on with Emmett's life, but I'm glad he has a friend who's trying to celebrate with him. That's awesome. So Love that. Love that. We're getting close to the end here from our time here. So um, I guess my last thoughts I have for you, or questions, is like, we're dealing with hard stuff. What are some things that give you hope and just that give you something to look forward to in this time? And what do you think that we can be doing as individuals to help support others in this time of need?
I think as individuals, it's really hard to we feel really helpless right now because there's a lot of change happening around us, but just harnessing in on like, what can we do? And finding the joy in supporting others. If that, it could be a local nonprofit that has impacted you positively. If you can't monetarily support them, are you able to give time? Are you able to share social media posts to create awareness? I think just disseminating more of the positive things is really good right now. And then finding just the joy in those small moments. And it could be the kindness that you exude to others, and it doesn't have to be the big things, but just taking a moment to find gratitude for those small moments of kindness that have been shown to you too are really huge. And acknowledging the little stuff right now, I think, is the building blocks to continue moving forward. And I think of it like that gratitude and acknowledgement as fuel to move forward, and really taking time to give ourselves moments of quiet, whether that's, dog walking is kind of my moving meditation, or just sitting outside in the morning. I like mornings because they're really quiet, but just giving ourselves some moments of peace, because we don't get a lot of it right now. We're bombarded with a lot of information always, but especially right now with we're living in a pandemic, and just all of the human rights issues and political issues that are occurring right now too. So finding moments of quiet and finding ways that you can give back to really bolster the community that you're in. And then it doesn't have to be money, just time or support over social media is huge.
I love that, and I think you're spot on. We're in a busy world. I don't do well with quiet. I don't do well with it at all, and I need to acknowledge it more and be more open to it, because our world is busy. It's loud, and we lean into that more and more every day. And so, yeah, I love that you said find those spaces, those times, those spots for peace and reflection. So awesome. Well, I already shared this before, but Sarah, did you have anything to add with your with the stuff you have on your site, or not? Because I know it's not just about the products. You have a lot of other things involved here.
We have our blog on there too, and even on social media, I like to cover everything from the stories behind our brands, the people who make our products, but also mental and physical wellness, social justice, and things like that, because I truly believe in sustainability, they're all connected. So there's a lot of information and things that you might not typically expect to see from a retail account or retail website too. So I invite everyone to check it out.
And also, if you're in the business of checking things out, feel free to check out our social media handles at Resilient Today. That is on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We don't do much on Twitter though, but so Facebook, Instagram, hang out there with us. Because one thing I've gathered from multiple weeks of this, a common theme, we often touch on having a community of support. It's important to know you're not alone in things. You have people who are in your corner, even if you don't know them. So if you're having a hard time, you just need someone to reach out to, reach out to us at Resilient Today. And we want to get you support. If it's something, if you're in need of some mental health support for some serious issues that you're dealing with right in the moment, we have a list of resources. We can get you connected with people, but also just look in your community, because we want people to be well mentally. And right now is a hard time. Things are happening. It's hard to, like you said, Sarah, it's hard to sometimes see the positive in things. And right now we're in the midst of a time where it's very difficult to see the positive regularly. So please reach out, because once again, we are here. We're not going anywhere. We want to be there to support you. And I know there are others in your communities who want to support you as well. And next week we'll be back Thursday. It'll be at noon next week, right here on Facebook Live. Join us for a conversation with Michaela Sieber. And once again, Sarah, thank you so much for being on here with us. Thanks for talking. Thanks for sharing. We need to continue conversations. We need to talk about the things that are uncomfortable. We need to talk about what's going well, what's going poorly, and how we get through them, because we learn from each other. And so I thank you for taking time to spend with us today, and for being vulnerable and open and sharing your story with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you all again, and we'll see you next Thursday.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.